everybody, and welcome to another week of CLCI Live. I know you missed us last week because of the holidays, but we're back with another episode. Before we get started on the topic, be sure to comment and field your questions to us in Facebook and YouTube land. We will be monitoring the comments. Actually, Jerome, will we be monitoring the comments? I know that's Brooke's job.
Yeah.
She's feeling a bit under the weather today, so she won't be joining us. But we will be monitoring your comments. We will answer your questions, and we will give you shout-outs as well. So, on to the topic for today.
Wait.
What?
Get well soon, Brooke, if you're watching.
Yeah. Get better, Brooke, and all that stuff. What are we talking about?
Why are you laughing?
Because I'm keeping us on the ball. No distractions.
Yeah.
Sorry. Strike
Brooke,
one.
if you're out there and you're watching, also comment too, so we know you're live. What are we talking about today? What's our topic?
It's a good one. It's rejection.
Rejection in terms of what? How to reject someone? How to take rejection?
Well, I think there's, for me, two types of rejection. There's rejection, the act. So I make an offer and someone says no. That's a physical act of rejection, but there's also the feeling, right? Because someone can reject me and I don't necessarily feel rejected. Also, something can happen where I'm not rejected, but I feel rejected. So for me, there's two meanings to rejection.
What's I guess what's differentiates rejection from just like maybe failure? Because when you're trying to attempt something, and let's say I fail at a task, like I want to go run, after work, and I hurt my leg, or I just don't go. I mean, that's not rejection. That's just a failure to doing something. But what makes rejection a bit more special when you're trying to attempt something?
I think it's that emotion connection, that attachment and emotional relevance that you put to that concept. If you aren't overly attached, then it's not going to impact you. If you are overly attached, it has an opportunity to potentially impact your how you feel about it, your thoughts about it, how you interpret things.
But you can get really attached to like goals that like only include yourself and fail and take that to heart. But that's not necessarily rejection. It's like we're missing a component to the rejection.
I think rejection it's personalized. It's got another party involved outside of just yourself. Rejection to me requires somebody else to perform an act for it to be necessarily a rejection.
Yeah. Brooke's alive and she commented on YouTube.
Yay!
Show that comment.
When I'm working with couples, a lot of the times that's what they interpret from one another. They have this place where they are not in a good space with their relationship, and they overly evaluate what another person's face is doing, specifically their significant other. And oftentimes they will misinterpret what their partner is displaying, with facial expressions. And that oftentimes becomes a place for landing and having a conversation. What was your interpretation? How did that be? What were you really thinking when you made that face? So opening up that dialogue in that space where they felt rejected can turn around if they allow it.
And Brooke adds to it as well. It feels like something done to you or an action against you. It has social implications. It does.
A judgment. It's a judgment, right? It feels like a judgment.
Yes. And I mean, the feelings of rejection aside, an actual rejection, is a judgment or a statement about you in some way. I know a lot of the stuff that I've read says, don't take it personal. When most of the times the rejection is entirely has to do with you as a person or some quality about you even if you don't. People say not to think of it that way.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't think all the time though, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're selling me something that I have no interest in, I'm not rejecting you. I just have no interest in it. It's not personal. It's not about you. It's about what you're offering me.
I was
True.
at a bank. I was at a bank a while ago, and they were trying to sell me something. I can't remember what it was. And I go, no. And they go, why? I go, it's none of your business.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, it's another way to look at it is that you're rejecting the offer. You're not rejecting the person.
Exactly.
If like a banker said, "Hey, like you can have like this deal," I'd be like, "No, I don't want the deal. Not interested." I'm not saying I'm not interested in you, the banker. If they came around with a sweeter deal, then I might be more interested. But I'm talking about like maybe like let's say for a job.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, I'm the one who's on Indeed when we have job ads, and I'm rejecting everyone. So
You rejecter you.
yes, so I get to reject a lot of people in a very short amount of time.
Look at him smile as he said that. Did you
Yeah,
see
because it's funny because I'll take it like
Serious.
I'll take things very personally sometimes, like it's a personal affront to me. So like when we part of one of our job positions required very specific credentials or certifications, and I said if you don't have this, do not apply. You will be rejected. And lo and behold, people applied without the thing that was required, and that got me very mad. So each rejection felt very personal to me, and I was rejecting that person for very personal reasons. In less psychotic terms, though, like job interviews in general. Like if you get rejected for a job, you kind of feel that because you didn't bring enough to the table what the person wanted. And that can go for relationships as well. If you're pursuing a relationship and you get rejected, it kind of feels like you didn't bring enough to the table to get what you wanted.
Yeah, I think I think really there's a selfish aspect to taking rejection too personally, because sometimes I think you're required, or you should. I think if you're trying to think objectively and without maybe as much emotion in a scenario where you're getting rejected, it's a good idea to kind of step back and maybe think about the potential non-personal reasons for you not being accepted. Just an example for a job. Maybe you were one of the last people that applied and they just didn't get to your resume, and it had nothing to do with your previous skill set, your prior positions or anything like that. It was something that was it had nothing to do with you. So again, when I say it's,
I did have to do that in real life, and you know whose fault that was? It was Jen's fault. Because we hired her, and all the other people who I didn't even get to, I was like, well, sorry, we already filled the position.
I'm sorry to those people.
Yeah.
So there you go. Real life example of exactly as to how it isn't always, as personal as we'd like to think that it is, which is a good way to really kind of help yourself when you do feel, because I know you can, and me personally, I've been there before, where you can really go down that rabbit hole of sitting and thinking that it's you did this, it's wrong, you're the one that messed up here in this scenario, you're not qualified enough, whatever it is. But really changing your perspective, and hopefully moving past that, realizing that you're not the only factor in this equation here, can really help the outcome of how you feel.
So, I mean,
I don't know if that's necessarily true for some people. I was reading some of the research that we were going through and then looking at some others. It sometimes is basically, they were saying it's built in your DNA to be sensitive to that. So you might still have a reaction to that experience, but knowing it's kind of what they were saying is knowing yourself and understanding that's a piece of you allows you that space to provide yourself your mourning process. Allow yourself to be in that space of releasing that energy, because it did impact you. It did affect you. It does have sometimes self-esteem issues attached to it. Sometimes even they were talking about attention deficit, how many times one, and I am attention deficit as well, and have sensitivity towards rejection as well. Can't even say the word. Did you hear me stutter through that word?
Allergic to it.
And it's a place for me when I feel that way, I have to do my paces. I have to, allow myself that energy that I need to express my disappointment in, or whatever it is I'm feeling. And know in the end, my intellectual sides goes, it's not that big a deal. What is this? You're not really even attached to this. How did that become? But it's still a process I have to go through in order to release that energy. So it depends. I would say yes, and sometimes no. It just depends on, I don't know a better word to use than the attachment to the rejection.
I think it hurts every time. No one likes to get rejected. I think you can kind of mediate some of that pain, but rejection to me, I think, hurts most people. I would say if you're human and have emotions, no one.
We did see that one video of the guy on TED who
I
sought
love
out
that.
rejection, and then
I love
eventually,
that.
for those of you out of the loop, you can just search this on YouTube, TED Talk rejection. But it's this guy who spent, was it 100 things or was it 100 days of rejection?
I think it was 100 days.
We'll say 100 days of rejection. He tried to do outlandish things for 100 days in a row to get rejected every single time. And so he would walk up to people and ask, hey, can I borrow $100? He went to Starbucks and asked the people working there if he could work as a greeter, other ridiculous things as well. And he was terrified at first, but he eventually grew accustomed to it and enjoyed the whole process of getting rejected. And he got accustomed to it. So there's a certain thrill in maybe getting rejected and like knowing that it's going to be okay afterwards. And you're just sort of patiently waiting for the results of this rejection. I'm trying to think of it. Have there been any instances in your guys' life where you were rejected and it was a good time?
Yeah.
And it was a good time.
Oh, yes.
I know there's got to be some. Yeah. I can't think of any.
So I've been fired before. I should have said, close your ears, guys. And I have experienced that very, very painfully. I mean, just gutted me. It was so personal. It was so hurtful. And then I've also been fired where it was like, thank you.
How many times have you been fired?
I know. I'm like, whoa.
Why didn't we do any background checks?
Listen, I'm working the wrong job for me. Just know that.
All right.
Okay, so I'm working the wrong job. It's like I'm not a fit. I'm trying to be a fit. I'm not a fit. And then, I get fired, and I have experienced it so painfully, but I have also experienced it where it was like, yes, oh my God, what an incredible gift you've just given me. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go. It was so exciting. I was excited. I came home and I told my husband, the best thing happened today. I got fired. And his face was like, what? And I was like, it's amazing. I'm going to get such a better job. It's going to be so great. And sure enough, that's what happened. So I've experienced rejection being very painful, but I've also experienced it being amazing.
I can see a scenario where probably maybe some of us can relate to here, where you make plans maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Prior to, maybe last week, for example, say just in this scenario that we're pretend making up. Maybe last week I made plans, and I actually am going to dinner today. So this is not how I'm going to feel afterwards. But maybe you go through an entire day of work, and you're like, man, I know I made plans later, but geez, I'm really kind of getting sluggish here. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. And then your friend calls and says, hey, I had a really bad day at work. I'm not gonna be able to make it. And you're like, oh, okay, well, this is a mutual rejection. I like it. This is okay.
I'm trying to think, maybe like examples of like rejecting you though, Jerome, not falling, like, because if you were a more sensitive person, then you might see it as a rejection. But
Yeah.
I don't think you took it as a
Yeah.
personal rejection.
That's true. Not very attached to it if you didn't want to go anyway. So is it really a rejection? That's also kind of what I was running through my head watching that TED talk. Some of those, 100 days of rejection. Some of those I feel like he wasn't necessarily attached. Again, rejection hurts, but
I think that's what changed for him is he he was connected to what he was doing, but he wasn't attached to the outcome.
But there are scenarios where we get rejected and we are hyper attached, and it's for a good reason. Things that are important to us, things that we care about.
Yeah.
Not to say that experiment wasn't cool. It was great to watch, but
I have an example where like my value was very much like quantitatively like rejected, but I wanted to be rejected, but it was also a little bit just like, I guess I'm not worth as much as I, thought I was, or you guys made it out to be. This is when I was working a different job and doing a good worker, hard worker, and, was pretty responsible, and they wanted me to move up and they wanted me to promote. And I would have to, interview for that, take on more roles. And I didn't want to. I let my supervisor know this is not something I wanted to do. But they kept on, asking about it. And I eventually let it be known, like, okay, I'll consider it for like this rate. Like if you guys pay me like $26 an hour, which I kind of expected to be a little bit more than what they were going to let new corporals be. But if you do this for me, I'll interview for it. And within the next day, I get pulled into the lieutenant's office to talk about my possible promotion, but also about the raise. And they're like, we can't do that.
Oh,
we're not gonna do that for you. And we're little insulted that you asked for that much without putting the time. I was like, I didn't ask for that though, but that's fine that you guys, so we're not going to have this talk anymore. It's like, it's all right. Like, yeah. So
why did they flip that on you? They wanted you. Yeah.
It's a smart move to do, but I got rejected for my 26 an hour promotion that I didn't want, which, was nice, but also at the same time, it was just like, why'd you guys ask me then?
Ooh, that's a good one that Brooke brings up.
Yeah.
Online dating. I think it was relieving when people didn't respond. I think because it was scary to actually have to meet new people online. I did the online dating thing for like a week, and it was cool for like maybe validation, seeing someone like my picture. But yeah, I didn't really have any interest in actually creating.
You know what is nicer about being rejected? Because when you're rejected earlier in the online dating process, it's a bit relieving because you don't want to eventually go on a date with somebody and then get rejected, like after you like go on a few dates, which I have had happen to me before. But it's more personal after that too, because if it's the first time, you can like the first instance of meeting someone, or not even meeting them, like swiping right on them and connecting. If you don't connect that first time, who cares? You didn't invest a lot. But after they met you, then, oh God, it's like very personal now. I don't know. What are some other rejection stories? Lisa, you had a good rejection story.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of a different one at the moment. One of the first jobs that I had when I moved out to California, I was like 19 years old. Yesterday, right? I got hired at a company who had, the person that was there was an excellent employee. She ran everything. She knew numbers off the top of her head. She just was amazing, very efficient. And here I come in, this little 19-year-old trying to fill her shoes. Well, I failed miserably. Got thinking I knew things I didn't know. So it came time for me to be fired. Sad face, fired. And I could tell he was feeling really, really, really sad that he had to fire me. And I was in that begging, I just need the job. I just want the job. Blah, blah. No, I have to let you go. And that rejection, actually, a lot of the times when you have rejection, you can look back at it. It was a good thing. That separation from that company was a more healthy place, that next step that I went to, where I became much more valued and much more in alignment with my know-how at 19 years old, which wasn't a whole heck of a lot, especially being shy, very not opinionated, and not having a voice very much. The next job, I started having one and growing into my voice. So kind of a cool rejection, but it didn't happen in the moment. It was after the fact, after that reflection of looking back. The story that Anthony was talking about, and I've told you guys this before, it's a lighter version. I was sitting next to, I was in the LAX restaurant, sitting down having some breakfast. It was like normal, early for my flight because I didn't want to miss it. So I was having some breakfast. Two gentlemen come and sit next to me, and we have this nice chit chat going on. Good morning, chit chat. And all of a sudden, I see this ginormous ring on his finger and comment. I go, oh, that's really a big ring. And he said, yes, it's the Stanley Cup ring. I had to look it up and Google Stanley Cup ring. I know. All you sports people always laugh at that because I had no clue what that was. I assumed, but I wasn't sure for any reason. So it was the LA King guy sitting next to me, and everybody asked, who was it? I don't know. The point that I usually am making about this is because we were having a really nice conversation. I could, and I did. I had 2 business cards in my hand that I was going to give it to them. And Jen's asking me, who was it? I don't know. He's pretty cute though. Big old cut on his face. So I have no idea who it was.
It was LA?
Yeah.
Could have been Gretzky.
They were going up to Canada to go skiing. Anyway,
I bet it was.
These 2 business cards sitting in my hands because I was going to just hand it to them. Who knows? Who needs a couples coach, right? And I never got the courage to actually give it to them. So I rejected myself in that sense, right? I rejected myself, and I even went through the effort of following through with that rejection, what I preconceived that they would do with my cards, as opposed to just letting them do that. So that overthinking, that postulating essentially of that business card, I threw in the trash can. Because that's what I did, is I rejected myself. I didn't put myself out there. I didn't give myself that space to risk. And when you're possibly going to get rejected, you are risking. Mm-hmm. What is it do you think that we are risking in those spaces?
Your self-esteem.
Self-esteem, yeah. Self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Feeling of worthiness or unworthiness.
Progress.
Mm-hmm. But I can clearly say today that I did make progress from it, that I did learn from it, that I had an opportunity to either let it drop me or promote me, and I chose to let it promote me because I would never do that again.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, I know we've been talking about maybe some of the deficiencies of getting rejected and how it can make you feel, but There are some good things that can come from rejection. I think as long as you take it with a grain of salt, and just like in Lisa's scenario, next time something comes up where you do maybe feel rejected, or actually turning that rejection into maybe some fuel, kind of like one of our lives that we've had previously, friction and fuel.
That one keeps on, like, that one for some reason just stuck with everybody.
Mhm.
That little friction and fuel, those keywords. So I guess going into our actual topic, how does this relate to coaching? How does rejection come up in the coaching space?
A lot of the times clients will come in. I mean, I've already mentioned about the couples, how they will interpret and misinterpret one another. But, the average individual client can come in wanting to make a leap in something and having made leaps before, had that rejection.
Mhm.
So they have some fears attached. So that work with the client through their fears and what's preventing them from moving forward.
There was a client that I had who hasn't been rejected yet in the space we were coaching, but they were afraid of the rejection, and they were afraid of the investment and the loss of a time investment. And Brooke mentioned earlier, how does investment play a role? I keep hearing the word come up, because investment is like paying a resource. Like if I paid $50 to end up just getting rejected, I've got some weird examples coming up in my head. But if I don't know, if you paid actual money or had an actual time investment and that was for nothing, that feels really bad. And some people just sometimes they invest too much where the investment doesn't feel worth it to lose that all. One of my clients from a while ago, they wanted to do coaching, but they were afraid of being rejected by clients for not having a lot of experience, and they didn't want to face that. Which, from my point of view, I didn't say this, but from my point of view, not doing the coaching is already a waste of the investment that you put into the coaching and what our current sessions were about too. So
that's a big one, Anthony.
Yeah.
That is a really big one.
Yeah, they're afraid to make an offer because of the possibility that they will hear no, or they will hear crickets. I think for a lot of people, that is the scarier one, is that they don't even get anyone interested who wants to talk about their offer. They put their offer out and it's just like nothing. I think that's terrifying.
Yeah, and Brooke also posted in the comments, is it for nothing? Can you change that perspective? It's only for nothing once it becomes for nothing. And that's on the decision of the person who was risking rejection. So, for example, maybe like, let's say a personal example, it's like I wanted to do commercial acting for a little while and like film acting. And I would apply for these roles in Los Angeles, and I would invest time and money into this, time in trying to, get the role right and memorize my lines, and time and money by traveling back and forth out there when I wasn't making a lot of money. And sure enough, I'd get rejected every single time. It's difficult at times when you are not getting resources back from an investment to keep the investment going. So eventually that rejection came to nothing. I ended up not pursuing that anymore. And the time and money I put into traveling to LA was really for nothing. That being said, I can come up with all these grandiose, nice sounding platitudes like, well, I learned from the experience that people in LA just don't like me. Or, I got experience putting myself out there and learn not to be afraid of getting rejected. But when I'm talking time and money, that was definitely lost. So there's a balance there that you got to maintain when it comes to our clients who are legitimately investing time and money. Rejection could be losing that time and money. And I've had a lot of clients who are afraid of that. And I couldn't just tell them, taking off the coaching hat and putting on the advice hat, well, there's a lot to learn from this. And right, so, like, it's difficult to navigate that space as a coach. I'm going to stop monologuing. How would you guys deal with that as a client for either clients who are afraid of losing something, and maybe opening their point of view to more outcomes and expectations, like
So you're referring to like when you're making an offer, maybe when you're in, some sort of consultation, or is that what
more
you're referring
so when the client is afraid of rejection and it's holding them back from making good on their investment of time or energy.
I see. So you're saying the client is already invested. They're already paying you. You're already coaching them. And they're afraid to go out and do these things that they come to you and talk about wanting to do and wanting to achieve.
Yeah. Or they've already invested in their goal, but they're not taking that final leap where either they're going to get rejected or it's going to work out for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what I did with my business cards. It's self-rejection. So I might, depending on how the flow of the coaching session, ask them, who's rejecting you right at this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to guess. Me? Yes.
Sure. Isn't that a little bit maybe leading or assumptive, though?
That's why I said it's kind of depending on how the session goes. If they said, I'm afraid to be rejected, I'm not putting myself out there, I'm, that flow of conversation, that could be an opportunity to help that client find their expansion and self-growth with that question. For another client, it might not be appropriate. It just depends. But I would help in that space of helping them expand their thought on what was going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I notice the client rejecting themselves, I would point that out. I would say, I notice that when you take inaction, it's almost as if you are already experiencing rejection. It's just not coming from someone else. What does that mean? I would tell them what I see, and I would ask them about it.
My assumption, I probably would not vocalize this in the coaching session, but my assumption would be it feels safer to reject yourself than it does other people to reject you. Mm-hmm. It can almost feel like it's an empowerment when it's really not, to, make yourself believe that you are accurately the judge of your own value and then reject yourself, which is funny because we do encourage that kind of, mindset in coaching. You are the final arbiter of your own value, but that could lead some people to be like, well, I'm worth nothing, so I shouldn't do anything, or I shouldn't pursue anything good, when that's not true. But is it our job or is it not our job to tell our clients that's not true? You do have value.
It's not that we're telling them,
Mm-hmm.
We're helping them to find their voice, because if they're already coming to us and saying, I haven't been able to make the leap, I just, for whatever the reasons that they come up with, they're already asking essentially permission, right? And we can't give them that permission. So it's finding out what their language is in the process of when they have risked, maybe in the past, what did that look like? When the risk failed, when the risk succeeded, what's the difference between the two? What can empower you in this moment based on that scenario? What's the learning? Again, we have to have a real situation to be able to have the right dialogue with the coaching words. But again, it's about that, getting that client to expand. I've taken this a coaching class. It was amazing. It was a whole lot of fun. I learned so much. My relationships at home are really even improving based on the skills I learned. But I don't seem to be taking it on the road. I don't seem to be reaching out to people to let them know I have this skill set that's going to help them figure out who they are. I can certainly see someone coming in and saying that. I've had several students talk to me about this process.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do with this? Well, I want to get clients. What kind of clients? And that's when we do the marketing, sometimes the marketing conversation and who that client is, where they are, maybe.
Yeah,
but the reality is that they have to feel strong enough to make the leap. What's going to allow them to feel empowered enough to make that leap that allows them to interact with a human and connect with coaching? Yeah, go ahead, Anthony. Interrupted.
I mean, I just kind of realized too, you can save yourself a lot of rejection too, if that's something that you are kind of avoidant of. You can save yourself a lot of rejection by having the awareness of knowing what exactly it is you offer and bring to the table. So I'll revisit the coaching space, but outside the coaching space, if I wanted to get a programming job and I didn't know a dang thing about programming, I'm going to get rejected, and I'm probably not going to get a lot of value out of that. Likewise, if you're out in the dating scene and you're trying to go for 10 out of 10s and you're like a 1 out of 10,
who gives that kind of number? I'm gonna smack you.
I'm being facetious, but like if you are a coach and you don't know who your client is and you're just trying to put yourself out there for everyone, you should expect a lot of rejection, and it's gonna suck no matter what, even if you do learn some things about it. Hopefully what you do eventually learn is to narrow it down to who it is you're actually serving. And I mean, if Brooke was here, we would call it finding your niche. But once you narrow your niche down and find out what is exactly your skills can serve and who it is you're trying to talk to, you're going to find rejection happening a lot less often.
Right, because you find the way you want to interact. You find the words that speak to that target. You find so many, which is part of even what, how do you say his name? The TED Talk Jay? Is that how you say his name?
I'm not sure what his name is.
I think it was Jai.
Jai. That essentially he was saying, have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're being rejected, have a conversation. I mean, which I think, Jen, when you've come on, that's pretty much what we shared with you. It's not about, we're not trying to sell anybody our school stuff.
Right.
We're having a conversation. We're amazing. We love what we have. And you're calling us. We want to share with you. And that's part of what he was talking about, is the ability to have a conversation. And if you don't know what your conversation is, then by all means, you're going to get rejected. So part of this is, when we're in this coaching field, is finding out what your conversation needs to be, no matter what direction you're moving. You want a new job. You want to move up in the company. You want to get better acquainted with your partners. You want whatever the topic changes to, it gives you that freedom to interact differently by just having a communication and a conversation, which is the connection, but not the attachment that we put on things to have an outcome meet what we think we need.
And back to the coaching space, Anthony, that you had brought up about, the client is not taking action, or they're stuck in inaction. I think it could be very powerful for the client to recognize that they are going to experience or are experiencing rejection no matter what they do. They either put themselves out there and experience rejection, maybe, or they reject themselves. Either way, there's rejection. I think, just especially for me, having awareness of that, if I had that brought to the surface for me in a coaching session, that would become empowering, because I would then recognize that I get to choose which rejection is better for me, which one serves me more.
Which is the point about the business cards.
Mm-hmm.
Me choosing to reject myself is ridiculous. I felt ridiculous. I was embarrassed. I felt like in this irate. How dare I reject myself and not even give them permission to make the decision themselves? I decided for them. What kind of coach decides for their clients? I decided for them that I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm. Brooke asks, can we practice rejection with our clients? Can we reject them to toughen them up?
No, but we can certainly role play.
Yeah.
I would say if the client asked me to do that, like as a role playing thing, I'd be like, sure. But here's the thing though, we're doing this as a role playing exercise, and you know it's a role playing exercise, and I know it's a role playing exercise. When you're out in the real world, the stakes are higher. So it's your mileage may vary with maybe those kinds of things because it's not real rejection. Now, maybe to get onto the topic of real rejection, there's probably fun examples of this. Have you ever been rejected by a client in your coaching sessions where either maybe they reject something you say, like a question, or they flat out say, I'm done coaching with you, you suck, and then walk away? Jen?
Not the you suck, but I once repeated what I thought I heard the client say.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I didn't say that. I said, and my initial, response was like, oh, like I tensed up. I was like, oh shit, I can't believe I just did that. And then I just kind of breathed, and it was just like, okay, this is part of coaching. Nothing has gone wrong. Like, you did your job and you didn't do it perfectly, but that doesn't, it's fine. It's okay. But my initial thought when she kind of rejected my reflection was to get upset about it. But then I just grounded myself pretty quickly and realized, oh, this isn't about me. This is about the client. I repeated her words wrong. She clarified that. That's good. I want my client to feel safe enough to clarify. I don't want them to just say, yeah, I said that, when they didn't say that. Mm-hmm. So I realized that rejection was perfect. It was so good. I needed that. That immediately made me grow as a coach.
Yeah, that's something, it's a blessing as a coach to have clients who will give you real good feedback like that. Because on the flip side, I've had clients who don't give feedback, and it's like, is this really working for you? Like, this coaching style, what's going on? Like, I mean, I can't think of a time I've ever asked, like, were my questions good? Was I a good coach? But if you establish a coaching contract, for example, like, hey, what are we going to work on today in the session, and how will you know, did we hit those markers? If you revisit that at the end, did we address what you want to talk about? And then they say no. Well, then maybe that can be viewed as kind of a rejection of the coaching, and then you can kind of evaluate how to do better next time by sticking to the coaching. I mean, it might not be your fault as a coach, though, so that's kind of beside the point. But Lisa, have you ever been rejected in a session?
Yeah, I'm thinking of, as I listen to Jen, I got a Me Too moment like Jen, where I'd been coaching, I don't know, for a few years at this point. So this was quite a while ago in comparison to now, but I was still really good at reflecting back what they said in a general way. Like, I didn't use every single one of their words, but I used the gist of their words. And the female said, no, that's not what I said. I went, oh, I'm so sorry. Please share with me again what I'm missing. So she said the same exact thing. I use more of her words, so more verbatim, more parroting of what she had said. Still not the whole genre of what she said. She said, no, that's not what I'm saying. And I'm looking at her mate and I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm missing. I'm looking at both of them, but then I'm looking more to the mate to help me. Share with me what she's sharing with me. I want to hear. Tell me what your interpretation of the share was. And I'm not going to go into that detail because it's a little more identifying to who that person is.
What are their names, by the way?
Yeah. And I won't even remember that. The idea was, in this space, she was manipulating me. So it wasn't a place of rejection for me. It took me a little bit to realize. I'm like, I know I said the same exact thing. I even wrote it down the second time just to make sure I was reflecting back. And in essence, what she was trying to do is get me to agree with her on the topic she was sharing so that it could be against her mate. So she was manipulating. So not all things are rejections. They are misdirections, perhaps at times.
Well, there's always a reason behind the rejection, even if the reason could be, benign, or it could be malbenign. I don't know what bad. It could be bad reasons that a rejection is happening. But there's always a reason, and maybe at times it might be obvious to the person being rejected what the reason is. Other times it might not be so obvious, but it might not be good to dwell on that either if you don't really know what the reason is initially, because you could be completely off the mark sometimes.
Let's have a conversation. Have communication. That helps clarify a lot of things.
What about the reverse? Have you guys rejected a client in a coaching session?
Yes,
I have.
I have, and she wrote a bad review about me even.
What's her name?
Yeah, I don't even remember.
What type of rejection was it?
I was saying that basically what needed to occur was counseling in this place. She needed to go there. She missed that whole thing, wanted another appointment, and I'm like, no. And I offended her. And she did not appreciate my no at all.
Yeah, that coupled with maybe if you're in session and your client is maybe being very blatantly disrespectful to you, it might be the only couple times I would see rejection kind of fitting into a session as far as what a coach should be doing when it comes to rejection or rejecting. You shouldn't really be rejecting your client's ideas or anything.
No, not rejecting their ideas, just saying coaching wasn't the proper fit.
Just so everyone is aware who's watching, we don't mean like the client says, hey, I have this idea, and you say, no, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, no.
We're not trying to invalidate our clients, but similar to Lisa, I've had a situation where it was a topic that covered like depression and PTSD or whatever, and I said, I can't go there. Like that topic of conversation is a no-go for me, because I gave the reason why I rejected it, though, which was I'm not qualified to have this conversation. I gave alternatives that we could work with in the coaching space, but I said no to that. Jen, you looked like you had something you wanted to say real badly.
Yeah, because I just realized I do reject clients. So maybe it's not real rejection, but when the client shares something that sounds like a limiting belief to me, I don't just accept it. I actually will say, how do you know that? What makes that true for you? What's not true about that? I'll challenge. So I won't just accept. I kind of do reject when I hear something that sounds very either self-depreciating or limiting. And they can do what they want with it. Sometimes they'll stay right in it. They won't even miss a beat. Nothing I can do. But I'm offering that intercept of like, hold on, what else is there? And some of them take you up on it, and it's like all of a sudden they move in a different direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brooke's going crazy in the chat because you just said what she was typing. Yeah, we're being a bit. I mean, for the sake of the live, we're being a bit black and white with rejection versus maybe acceptance. There's a lot of other things that you can that happen other than just in the rejection space, like a challenge. You don't just accept everything that's given to you. You can challenge it to explore more in depth. I had a train of thought that I just lost.
But it is possible, though, that when you as a coach challenge your client's belief or thought, that they will take it as a rejection. That is possible.
That's fine.
So if the client does take it as a rejection and gets offended, then what do we do? I've never had that happen. I think
So
they don't feel like we're usually out to get them, though, when we do that. You know, when we're in that challenge language, we've already established rapport. We've already got some of who they are. You know, they've got who we are, and they know even by our body language that we're not.
It's true.
I would say truly rejecting them in the negative sense. So I've not experienced that either.
I'd have to have like a specific example because there's like two things going on: rejection and then offense, which they can be mutually exclusive. But in this case, they can be offended if they want to, if they share their grievance with me, then we can explore that. But if they're just felt hurt by my feedback, and I felt like I was doing my due diligence as a coach, then it's just like, well, you can sit with that emotion.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is what happens sometimes when you're in that coaching session. They didn't expect whatever it was to come up. And for some reason that disappointed them versus empowered them. But oftentimes I got to say that work in between the time that they left and the time that they come back, even though that moment disappointed them, it exploded in a better direction for them because they got to evaluate different pieces that they hadn't even considered, which is what you said, Jen.
This can also lead into, like, if a client felt rejected by you, that could be an underlying sign that they're looking for your approval or your stamp of approval on whatever yes they want you to co-sign, which could be explicit, where they're asking for your approval on something, or they just feel that disappointment, which is tough. I don't know if I've ever told a client, hey, don't seek approval from me, but how do you, I guess, set that expectation from the get-go? I'm not here to give my approval. I'm here to coach you. How would you set that expectation in the moment or maybe at the beginning?
So if they're looking for your advice, I mean, of course I got advice. I've got advice for my life. I haven't lived your life. I don't have advice for you. Let's discover together what's going to best work for you. Well, I want your advice. Just tell me. Okay, let's first discover what your opinion of this situation is, right? So it's to constantly move it back to them and getting them to communicate what their story is, and then us asking those questions.
And if they pushed, I want your advice, I would ask, what makes my advice more important to you than your own advice?
But you're the expert. You're the X, Y, and Z coach. You're the relationship coach, Lisa. You know relationships. You've coached lots of people.
And everyone, that while there are similarities, everyone is different. And what fits for Anthony will not fit for Jerome.
Brooke said, give them the
What?
Give them the worst advice.
Well, that could be, you know. See if they have
Listen to her. Geez, she's not even here, and she's telling.
That probably could work in a coaching example to like give an example of why giving advice is bad. Like I could say, if you're working to get a relationship, you should get a divorce.
Oh my gosh! Do you know there's a few couples that I just wanted to say run for the hills
I
But I had to get rid of that. I had to get rid of that thought. I had to get rid of that even concept in order to work with them. But yeah,
but specifically, I can see how if I was in a coaching session and someone asked for advice, I say, let me give you some bad advice first. And I give the bad advice, and then I would ask the client, now, what if I thought that was good advice as a coach, and you thought it was bad advice?
Yeah.
That's why I don't give advice, because what I think is good advice could be completely different from what you think is good advice.
I would say last person I gave advice to ended up in a penitentiary, so
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
I wanted to bring this up really quickly too, I guess in regards to maybe marketing. The most times and the best times a coach should reject clients is in the intake phase, whether that's your marketing, who you're rejecting as a client could be a form of marketing. Like, I don't coach weaklings who are weak-willed, mindless. That could filter out a lot of people and get the kind of clients you want, as aggressive as that may be. But also in your first exploration sessions, don't be afraid to reject your client if you feel like they're not a good fit for you, because even if they are a paycheck, I guess at the end of the day, you're probably going to regret having them on for 12 months, 6 months, 3 months, if it's just not the right fit for you. So don't be afraid to reject people earlier rather than later, because it also could be for your benefit. Yeah.
You could be rejecting potential opportunity for a client that you actually very much enjoy being part of sessions with.
Although we wouldn't, I mean, I know our title is rejections today, but we're not essentially rejecting them. What we are doing is saying that, I'm doing the backstroke here a little bit, that rejection is an education in a sense. It's, I'm not the best person to work with you in this given situation.
Let's all be honest here. There's also times where it's like, this person just seems like an asshole, and I'm rejecting them because I don't want to work with them.
Honestly, I have had several of those, and it turned around.
That's good. But for everyone that turns around, I'm sure there is ones that just don't work out for people, based on just incompatibility reasons. So if you got a gut instinct, where maybe you just want to reject a person and there's nothing really else to learn from it, just go for it. You might save yourself a headache, but you also might learn from it. I don't know.
Or if they're that horrible, you can just enjoy taking their money.
That's true. That is true. You can.
Bro, did that just come from you?
Yeah. What is happening?
Oh, wow, you and Anthony switched roles today.
It's essentially the same thing I did. It's the same thing I did with my job example. Just ask for more money, and they might end up rejecting you or just paying you more money. Either way, you win. Those are my final thoughts. Don't be afraid of rejection.
Use it to your advantage. Have a conversation, communicate, connect, but don't be attached to that outcome.
Jerome?
I would say rejection sucks, but again, it's not always going to be. It's not all bad. I think there is plenty of instances where rejection may come up where it might highlight, even if even if I'm saying I'm taking this rejection personally, maybe it's for a reason. Maybe there is something about your life that you are ready to change. And being rejected highlighted that this is the moment to go ahead and do that now. So I would say
learning opportunity.
Don't always take it as rejection as something just to drive you into the ground and keep you there. Find a way to kind of use that to your advantage, just as Lisa was saying.
Jen?
So my final thought is that you can be the most expensive cut at a steakhouse, the juiciest steak, right?
That's me, yeah.
And then there's people that don't eat meat, and so
Yeah.
Are you going to take that personally and make that mean something about you? Or are you going to sell to the people who love steak?
Good analogy. Wow, impressive.
I
Thank
like
guys-
good steak. I love a good steak, but sometimes I just want to make chicken. So it's not, you never know.
You guys know who will never reject you? Certified Life Coach Institute. That's why everybody should apply, register for our level 1 and 2 classes.
Wait, we're not calling it level 1 and level 2 anymore.
right.
Woo!
Okay. Also, here's an announcement, everybody. We are changing the name of our classes from level 1 and 2 to coaching 101 and 102. The reason why is because ISCF liked our name so much, they changed their accreditation process to now be level 1, level 2, and level 3. Obviously, there's going to be some confusion if we kept our names level 1, level 2. So now we are coaching 101 and 102. So sign up for coaching 101 and 102. I'm going to have to remember to not flub that in the future. We will never reject you. Well, there might be some times that we will reject you, but take our classes, learn to be a coach who deals with rejection. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share our videos, and we will see you guys again next Wednesday. Is that it? Did I do the thing?
You
That was
did
everything.
perfectly.
Goodbye, everyone. See you later.